It's not really based on what they call it is based on facts and figures because a scientific concept. So when we talk about scientific concept, it is based on facts and figures, and then it based on definitions, behavioral relationships amongst all of the stakeholders, among all the actors that is involved in that in urban planning, in planning. And assumptions that define the body of knowledge. So assumption that define, so meaning that when we talk about theory, sometimes it's just it is an hypothesis. We assume first, and then when we go to the real field and apply that theory, then we know whether the hypothesis or the assumption is wrong or right or correct, or what we should improve for that hypothesis or for that assumption. So it abstracts a set of general or specific principles to be used as a basis for explaining or acting with the theory being tested and refined if necessary. So again, that's what I told you just now. So it will be used as a basis for explaining or acting with the theory being tested and refined if necessary. That's why we have like 8 in procedural theories. We have like 8, or maybe there is a few others that have been that keep on emerging because we need to refine if necessary. So we need to refine, we need to improve based on situation, based on the needs in such situations. So that is but we need to but a theory must be tested, meaning you must give the first definition. It's based on scientific concept, behavioral relationship, assumption that define the body of knowledge. So then if it is encompasses all these components, and then it will be tested. It will be tested in a practical world. So that is when you can refine. So it's not just merely a word or a word, or maybe a merely unbasis assumption, but it is more on experimenting the scientific facts and figures. It will be based on the body of knowledge. So that is your word on your own words, or it's not merely on an assumption without facts and figures. So the theory must be tested and refined if necessary. So a theory is not a theory at all until it has been used in practice over a considerable period of time. So that is a theory. So this is another philosophical worldview of theory. We think that it is not a theory until it is been practiced over a period of time, until it is proven whether the theory is wrong or right, or it has been proven otherwise, or it has been refined. So that is a theory. So if it's just you come up with a theory in your study, but it never been tested, you never bring that theory in the practical in practice in real world. So that's not really a theory. So this is what you should understand first. So that is what planning theory is all about. So when we last week we talked about urban planning. So you need to understand all of the things that encompasses urban planning. So I hope that most of you have still remember what is urban planning, what is urban, what kind of field in urban planning, and then the theory of urban planning. So what kind of theory that will help or assist the urban planning, and they are really they have a mutual requirement between each other, the urban planning and the theory, the planning theory. That's why we call, that's why we need, we have this subject, theory of urban planning. So when you want to design or plan for a city, then you need to also know about what kind of theory that you will use as an acting, that will explain your action. Okay, so the procedural theories. So we have again this 8 theory. Just skip this one. I think I've mentioned this earlier. Okay, first we are going to look at the rational comprehensive approach. So what is rational comprehensive approach? So these are among the earliest planning theories during the 1800s. 1860s, something like that, before, I think it's prior the Industrial Revolution in the Europe. So these are among the earliest theory, the rational comprehensive approach. The model is the process of understanding a problem, followed by establishing and evaluating planning criteria, formulation of alternatives and implementing them, and finally monitoring the progress of the chosen alternatives. So that is the rational, if you look at the word itself, the rational comprehensive, meaning it is based on the rationality. So the planners, they will work on this model. So they will just need to understand a problem, and then they do some analysis, evaluate the planning criteria, and then monitor the progress. Something so just very straightforward for rational planning model. And then comprehensive rational planning was for a long time the predominant planning model. So this is quite I think it's almost like all postmodernity. So they use this kind of theory. If you look at especially in the most Europe during the before the Industrial Revolution. So if you can see how the cities changed, the urban morphological, the urban morphological establishment, you can see that it comes from this kind of approach. So it is based on instrumental rationality when analyzing and making decisions. So it is based on objective, goal rational. So what are the objectives? So what is your objective? So you when you want to know what is your objective, you need to know your issues and problem. So most probably like the SWOT that we're doing, the strength, weakness, what are the opportunities. So it is very basic and straightforward. That is rational. So their main purpose of rational comprehensive, the main objective, the main criteria of rational comprehensive approach is it is based on objective, goal rational. So meaning that what is their goal? What is your objective? So they will try to achieve that goal. So that is rational comprehensive approach. Okay, so now we discuss about the central assumptions on rational comprehensive approach, the assumptions and the role of planner, and then the criticism on this approach. So the central assumption, so we assume that and they found out that there is always a right or wrong way of management, problem solving, or development. So in this approach, in this theory, because this is a very long and old approach, so they have argued that there's only a right or wrong way of management. So there is no in between, or there is no okay, there's something that we can improve. It's not really wrong, it's not really right. No, in this approach, it is very rigid. So when they are using this kind of approach, so they only have right or wrong. So in terms of problem management, problem solving, and development. So in a positivist positivistic view, this model assumes that it is possible to find this best way, the best solution to all planning issues. So so it is quite what do you call? It is too too aspirational. I would say it's too aspirational when they say that they can find the best solutions to all planning issues using this approach. So the environment is controllable by using scientific knowledge and modern technologies. So they believe in progress. So there is a common public interest. Change has to be engineered from the top. So this is the old method. So the old method always top to bottom. So they're not really keen to use this bottom-up approach. So this kind of approach they are engineered from the top and they goes to the bottom as a final stage. So who wants to control? It is always from the top, and they are always believe in modern technologies. So they don't really espouse the traditional knowledge, the local knowledge. So these are the central assumptions of rational comprehensive. And then the assumptions and role of the planner. So by using this approach, what are the role of the planner if they use this kind of approach? So the planner is considered as a homo economicus. If he has collected and analyzed all the necessary data, his scientific knowledge and experience enables him to identify the common public interest. So the planner, where he can identify the common public interest or the common problem by collecting data using his scientific knowledge and experiences only. So identify all solutions, and then from this, the planner will identify all solution options and then evaluate them against specific criteria, especially the economic ones, and thus choose the best solution to all planning issues. Benefit maximizer. So they try to maximize the benefit, and this approach they are really focused on the economic aspect. Because this is during the 1800s, so they are moving towards the industrial revolution, something like so. They are more on the economic approach. So thus the planner is considered to be the expert capable to cope with the complexity of the world by using special techniques and technology to solve the relevant problems. So that's why during the like people like Ebenezer Howard, so they are very the pioneer in urban planning, they are the architects and urban planner. So this kind of person, they can become the godfather of new development during that era, because they think that they are the expert that capable to cope to solve the problems, so to solve the social problems during that time, the housing problem during that time. So that's why the role of planner too is quite big and huge during that time. So by using this kind of approach. So what are the criticism on this approach? So it is undesirable ethical effects. Planning as an objective activity without participation of the population on whom objectives and measures are imposed top down cannot be considered ethically correct. So especially in terms of people from the sociologists, humanists, participatory punya advocates, they don't really they don't really interested with this kind of approach, because it's not ethically correct. Because when you are imposing a top down measurement, a top down approach, and you didn't involve the participation of the people who are being the subject of the study, so then it is quite an issue that it's a problem that of course will be aroused later. So undesirable environmental effect or no successful results as local knowledge and practices are not incorporated. So these are the thing that we don't want to see, that we don't want, because by using this kind of approach, because they didn't use local knowledge, traditional knowledge. So because when you go to some place, why we need to sometimes to involve the participation from the local, because we want to know the local knowledge, the traditional knowledge, because the geographical is different from one place to another place. So the measures are not adapted. So when they do a measurement, so the measures are not adapted to the specific conditions. So the population does not support the measures ordered from the top, and no interjurisdictional cooperation is intended in this planning model. So if you can analyze the central assumption and then the role of planner and the criticism, you know where is the heavier weightage of these boxes. So when if the criticism is more heavy, is heavier, then we know that this kind of approach are no longer relevant in today's world. Okay, so then comes the incremental approach. So of course, incremental planning is the most widely noted alternative model to comprehensive rational planning. So in the early 1900s, we see the emerging of incremental approach, because we want to improve the rational comprehensive approach. So this kind of approach, it is on a pragmatic piecemeal approach to developing solutions to problems as they arise, rather than planning for them in comprehensive, overarching way as rational planning does. So like the rational planning and rational comprehensive, they look at a very comprehensive in general. So they just look at all the problem, all the issues, and come up with the best solution for all of the issues. So that is rational comprehensive. But the incremental, pragmatic, piecemeal approach, meaning that the other issues have different solution. So pragmatic piecemeal. So pragmatism. So pragmatism is about you adapt. The solution is adaptive. So you adapt your solution, your ideas based on the specific conditions of the issues and problem. And that is pragmatism. Pragmatism piecemeal approach, meaning that they did it in a piecemeal, meaning that they don't look at all the problems as one that need one solution, because every problem have different solutions. So that is incremental approach. The concept behind the incremental approach. Okay, so the central assumptions, pragmatic piecemeal approach to developing solutions to problem as they arise, rather than planning for them in a comprehensive overarching way. So meaning that in incremental approach, they try to they solve problem when the problem arises. So they don't plan earlier. They don't plan ahead. If anything, if any problems come up later, then this incremental approach comes in. So that is the central assumption of the incremental approach. Incremental, meaning that they need to see the problem first. They need to see the issue first. Then they can plan, or they can decide. His principle is that humans have a limited capacity for solving and understanding problems in comparison to the vast and expansive list of current and future obstacles that are trying to be resolved. So in planning, we plan because if we want to plan, we need to assume. So that is why sometimes in the rational comprehensive planning, they need to try to assume, but the assumption is that their goal is that they took it as a very general, all problems in one solution. But still we need to plan. If we are given an empty land, so we were given and then we are asked to plan for this whole new township. So we need to plan what kind. We need to assume. But in incremental approach, their principles is that humans have a limited capacity for solving and understanding problems in comparison to the vast and expansive list of current and future obstacles. So they cannot foresee the future obstacles. Not that they cannot foresee. They say that let's because their principle is that they need to. The approach is to develop solution to problem as they arise, not before the problems are emerged. So that is quite contradictory to planning, urban planning. So that is why we call plan, because we need to plan before we design, something like that. So there are different views and interests as well as multiple problems. Big changes are carried out best in little practicable steps over a long period, leading to satisfying results. So their central assumption is that big changes are carried out best in little. So meaning they are very the principle is very on this piecemeal punya concept. So they need to do big changes on by little, but specifically by focusing on each problem, each issues. So that is the incremental approach. So if you want to design a new township, a new like a super corridor, I think this incremental approach is not really suitable, but it can be applied in a place where there is already a development. Then we need to plan for the future development of that area by trying to solving the current issues. So that we can use this kind of theory. But if you're given an empty land to build a new township, for example, this is of course this is not really a suitable or relevant theory. So the assumption of role of the planner simplifies the complex world to an easier model. Often does not know the right problem and thus is not always able to determine a clear definition of goals and measures, and thus try to find a satisfactory solution rather than the best one. So the planner is considered less as the expert. In this role, comparison to the rational comprehensive theory, the planner is the godfather. I mean the problem solver of every issues. But in this approach, in this theory, the incremental planning, the planner is considered less as the expert. Society can make a contribution to planning as the provider of information. So they're not really involved in participate, but they can provide information. So that's why they said that the planner is considered less expert, because they in this approach they need information from society. And then what are the criticism on this approach? No radical changes are possible. They said there are no radical changes because it's just because you are doing a piecemeal solution, so you cannot see really a radical change. So solutions cannot be optimized. the focus is on what can be implemented. So the focus is on what can be implemented. So it is really on very specific. Only a few options are considered and evaluated. So there is no clear determination of goals and objectives. Because it is a piecemeal piecemeal approach. So no clear determination of goals and objectives. Rather, they are determined by a mixture of intuition, experiences, rule of thumbs, and a series of consultancies. So these are the incremental approach punya downside, the downside of incremental approach. Okay, any question you can ask that while while giving the lecture. And then the third one, the transactive approach. So when we talk about transactive, it's like we are doing transaction. The bank transaction, bank transaction meaning that you want to have you want to withdraw money. So then that is the transaction. You're given the online transaction. So meaning that the other people will give you the thing that you want. So it is a transaction. So transaction, when we talk about transactive, it doesn't mean a two-way. It can be one-way. So transactive planning model is based on communicative rationality. So mostly when you talk about transactive, it is a roundtable participative planning. But the focus is on transactive. It's not focused on communicative or participatory planning, because this type of rationality is based on human communication and dialogue between planners and the people affected by planning. So this is transactive approach. So it's not really a participatory planning where the people can involve with policy making, decision making, but this is between planners and people affected by planning. They communicate and have dialogues. For example, there's a given piece of land. There is a piece of land that will be developed as there are developers that want to develop that area to as a high-rise neighborhood. So there may be the people surrounded that piece of land may be affected. So this kind of approach is where they come and have a communication and dialogue with the surrounding people. So that is called a transactive approach. So the people are not really even you don't have the power. You don't really involved in decision making, but you will be given an opportunity to communicate and share your concern. So the central assumption, there exist various interests within society. So the interpersonal dialogue triggers a mutual learning process leading to an intensive communication about measure. So when you have a transactive planning, so actually you trigger a mutual learning process because you learn from the society, and the society can learn from the planners, from the authority as well. And then the role, the assumptions and role of the planner. So planners act as supporters and participants among many. So they are not really as a planner, as a people who make decision making, but they can be a supporter and participant, and equipped with technical knowledge, communicative and group psychological skills. Planners are able to reduce the disparities between the participants and reach consensus. So this is where so the role of planners if you notice from the earlier theories, and now we're coming to transactive approach, we can see that the skill of the planner is changing. So now they have like psychological skills because they want to this is because this involve society as well, so they have to do this transaction so they need to have other skill to reduce the disparities between participants and then reach a consensus. What are the mutual agreement? And then planners are the center of systematic knowledge. They also mediate between different interests and communicate information between the actors in the planning process. So the society bring a central contribution to the planning process with their traditional knowledge and experiences. So they plan and steer actively. So here in this transactive approach, as compared to the previous incremental, the society just give information provider, but here they can contribute to the planning process with their traditional knowledge and experiences. So they plan and steer actively, so that they have this active punya participation in terms of during the planning process and giving their traditional knowledge and experiences. And then the criticism on this approach is that participation takes time, which parts of the population do not have, especially the poorer ones. So when you involve participatory punya activities, the downside is that it always time consuming. So especially for the poorer one, they don't have time to participate because they have to work and they work. Especially most of especially for the poorer ones, they work sometimes their wages, their salary is based on per hour punya work. So per hour work is by hour. They are being paid hourly, so they cannot just leave their work and comes to your session, the participatory session. So that is why the criticism is that we cannot, it is very hard to include everyone, all the population in the discussion. And then this will lead to their interest may be ignored, especially the marginalized group, the poorer one, maybe the minority, that is the downside. High participation costs. So they said that if we are involving people, then the cost is also high. Sometimes the population may not be prepared to plan for the long run and thereby to postpone short-term satisfaction. So again, when they said high participation cost, but if you don't involve a community now, so there will be and they always be a problem later in the future, and that will I think that will make up another higher cost in order to reduce that to solve that issue. So that is why if you are really talking about cost now, but then you didn't think about what kind of cost that you will have to use in the future if there is another bigger problem arise later. So and then but then they say the population may not be prepared to plan for the long run and thereby to postpone short-term satisfaction. So that is the criticism on the transactive approach. And then the transactive also I think the communicative punya components is there in the transactive approach, but later on this kind of theories emerge, the communicative approach. What is communicative approach? What is the difference between communicative and transactive? So in this communicative approach, it doesn't give an answer. It questions the end goals as a way to dig deeper in search for a more rational common place between the interested parties. So the communicative approach maybe it's like it is like a discussion. So it's more on how because people want to know, people will ask questions every single thing that they have that they have planned. That what are the authors he has planned. So this process facilitates the rise of questions on the issue in hopes of better addressing deeper problems within the issue. So there are lots of questions in the communicative approach. So because they want to understanding others. So in order to understanding others, so you need to pose lots of questions, because the planning will involve a lot of people. They come from different backgrounds. So we need to, in communicative approach, we need to have a communication with all the population. So let's see the central assumption of the communicative approach. Planning should be about which project is more affordable to take on. And then it should be an argument about equity and fairness. So when it comes to communicative approach, they focus, their principle is on equity and fairness. What is equity? Equal treatment. So we have the equity. So every minority, every groups, every people are representable. So cannot effectively find a solution to an issues alone. So communicative approach should be used as a support in combination with other quantitative or qualitative approach that also provide a more information for a more rational solution. Like I said, because the communicative is more on asking question, discussion, so they need to combine with other methods, because they said that this is the priority, meaning that the discussion, the communication is the priority in order for you to step forward with your to proceed, to move on with your planning. So considers dialogue, the understanding of people's ideas, concerns, history, and all other aspects that relate to the land in which they live. So what are the roles of planner? So the role of planner is that they need to be able to manage the way people talk to each other. So this way, no one person dominates a big group with their way of thinking. So the role of planner here in this communicative approach is simple, but they need to be very skillful in managing, managing groups of people, managing, and they must have a very good communication, PR lah, public relation punya skill. So that PR, this kind of this is the role of planner in communicative approach. So what are the criticism? So arguments stating that this approach can get too complicated and convoluted due to too much public involvement. However, this shouldn't be an obstacle if you are hardworking, ethical, and committed to your community. So the first sentence, argument stating that this approach can get too complicated and convoluted. So actually, I have experienced this kind of arguments where people don't want to involve public. This is during my, when I did my study, when I did a research, when I go to, to have a stakeholders interviews. So this kind of argument, I've experienced it myself, where some people who are the authorities, they don't want to involve the public because of this, because they said it's too complicated and convoluted, and sometimes they said the public is not really, they don't educated enough, they don't really are educated enough to involve. So so that are some of the perceptions, by the authorities, by people who are in power, because they argue this. So they said that when it becomes too complicated, then it is really hard to focus. But anyway, this shouldn't be an obstacle if you are hardworking, ethical, and committed to your community. The last one, committed to your community, is the key word. Because we at the end of the day, who are you planning for? Who do you serve? Do you serve your boss? You plan for a new township, and then because you just want to get, you want to design just because you just want to get credited from your employer. You just want to get credited from, from the political party. So the government, because these are the designer, these are the architects. So is it, what are the purpose? What is your objective? So I think we need to kind of shift that kind of thinking. You don't work for your boss. You don't work but you work as a designer, as a planner, as an architect. You work for the community. You serve the community first. So if your intention is correct, then people who are working with you will acknowledge your uh your skill, your work. Okay. And then the advocacy approach. So as the term advocacy there, like advocates, in laws, if we are studying law, then advocates, the advocacy approach is very related to this to laws lah, because this advocacy approach, advocacy planning, this theory is introduced by a lawyer. He is a lawyer, Paul Davidoff, in 1960s. I'm not sure, not really remember the exact year, but it is in 1960s where Paul Davidoff introduced the advocacy approach. He is a lawyer and a planner. So because maybe during that time, the people who are studying, because when I studied planning, I also studied, you have to study the land law, so many laws that you have to study. So this lawyer, and he's also a planner. So he introduced this advocacy approach. So advocacy planning is a form of planning designed to place political power back into the hands of communities and neighborhoods that have lost it. Because Davidoff said that he can see when he designed, or when he planned, when he worked with the community, he can see that the community don't have the power, don't have the access to information, access to participatory process. So they don't have access to that so many planning process. So that is why he introduced this advocacy planning, because he wants to give the political power back into the hands of communities and neighborhoods. So advocacy planning also allow the community to either strengthen or create their political and social presence, also known as community empowerment, making it easier for these communities to intelligently argue for their communal needs. This is called community empowerment. So when you study, if you study community development, community empowerment, when you want to ask people, that is what previous theories, they said that if we involve public, it will be too complicated, because they said that the community, the public, they don't have the education, they're not really, they don't have the knowledge to participate. So that is their perception. So how do we fill that hole? That is what we call community empowerment. So when we have, how do we empower the community? We need to give them access to education. We need to give them access to information. Last time, after independence, our access on information, our access of education is school. We need to send our children to school. We need to give them. We need to have libraries. We need to have, because the library is the access to information. So when we want to study, there's always public library. So there are lots of that is kind of community empowerment that we can provide to the community. But nowadays, the access to information, the access to education, the standard become is more, is increasing. They don't, the community, the people nowadays don't really need, most of us are going, have gone to school. Schools and library, they are everywhere. But now the access of information and the access of education have changed, have shifted into the online world pula. So we need to provide that. It's not that we need to give everyone a laptop or a Wi-Fi, but we need to provide the infrastructure for that. Even the community will have to work for it. But if they don't have a good signal, a good infrastructure for that, meaning that you are denying their access to information, access to education. So that is the thing that we need to always remember when we talk about community empowerment. So this advocacy planning, they want to change that. They want to give communities the education, the information, so that they become empowered. So when they are empowered, they can argue intelligently for their communal needs. So then they know what is wrong with their neighborhood, what is wrong with the planning of their area, or else they don't know. Yeah, or else they just allow a high rise of a condominium being built just at the, at their, for example, next to the forest reserve in their neighborhood. But the land is already allocated for that condominium. So if they don't know anything about environmental impact, they don't know about, the landslide issue, they don't know about, they can just allow whatever planning or development that is being prepared and planned for their neighborhood. But if the community is educated, it's not what I mean by educated now, it's not really it's not on the degree of your studies, but educated, the information, meaning that they are knowledgeable. Even they don't go to university, they don't have masters, but they are knowledgeable because they are being given information. Even they are just sanitary workers, but they know they are right. So that is the kind of community that we want to create, that we want to that we want to represent. So that is this advocacy approach is all about. So the central assumption on advocacy approach, advocacy planning is not designed to control communities or baby them along the way. So it's not like when we say, when we focus on communities, so we want to control them or maybe we want to pamper them, no. But advocacy like community empowerment. So meaning that once they are empowered, so they can just go on their own. So they know, they have the knowledge. So it is also not designed for planners to overpower their clients. So the planners or the authorities cannot overpower the community because everybody has a mutual requirement, mutual understanding, and mutual outcomes. That is the most important thing. So all forms of planning include personal bias, and advocacy planning is no exception. However, advocacy planners must be able to put their bias aside in order to provide the most current and relevant information. So the assumption and role of planners, so planners to provide advice to communities on a communal need and to represent these communities in the discussions with political leaders. So these planners becoming the mediate person, mediator role. So need to discuss with the communities and then bring back the discussion to the political leaders or the government leaders. So an advocacy planner's main objective is to present planning regulations and information to ordinary citizens in order for the citizen to make a well-informed decision. For example, like I said, uh, if people or if the government wants to take, who wants to buy their what they call their farm. Maybe there is a paddy field. So the government want to buy that field because they want to develop some other industrial punya or whatever. So this kind of community, this group of community, they must know what are the planning regulations, what are the information that is available for them before they can make a decision whether to sell or not. So that is why we want to the citizen to make a well-informed decision by having the knowledge on the planning regulations and information. Most of us, we don't know the planning regulations. We don't know that sometimes we're being cheated. That's why we've been cheated, or maybe sometimes we can see that people easily change their status of land. For example, the status of land is for agriculture, but then they build houses and neighborhood residential. So when that happens, the authorities can come and stop the project, or can because you don't know the regulation and you just simply change this land status, for example. So that is very important for the community to know planning regulations. Being able to listen to the concern of the community and relay that information back to multiple parties will serve as an asset. Understand the different facets of diversity. What are the attempt to frame a single plan that represent the public interest, but rather represent and plead the plans of many interest groups. So in other words, planning should be pluralistic and represent diverse interests, especially minority interests. So that is this is the thing that we need to always remember. So-called citizen participation program usually react to official plans and programs instead of encouraging people to propose their own goals, policies, and future actions. Yes, this is what is happening in many cases. They just use the word citizen participation, that we have conducted public participation, but it's just as an official plan and programs only. They don't really work on encouraging people to propose their own goals, policies, and future action. So that's the same thing happen if you know ecotourism. If you ever heard ecotourism, when they say our resort is ecotourism listed because we design our resort, our hotels like this and like this. It is, but sometimes they just use the word ecotourism because they built their resort in an island or in a forest, so that they say that it is ecotourism, but they don't really know. They don't really follow the ecotourism guidelines. So that is what happening in citizen public participation as well. We talk about public participation, citizen participation, participatory activities, but it's just on official plan and programs only. They just call and then we just for an official, so that we can record we have done this. But it's not really, we don't really encourage people to propose their own goals, policies. So that's why when you go to many neighborhoods, it's not only on the poor, urban poor communities. Even if you go to the medium or high-end neighborhood, if you go and ask them about policies, about planning policies, no one knows. I would bet no one knows, except for those who are working with local authorities or who are working in the built environment. So no one knows about policies, but about the future action in their neighborhood. So that is discouraging. So neighborhood groups and ad hoc associations brought together to protest public actions should rightly do their own plan. So that is why we need the advocacy approach. That is why we need the community empowerment. So when they are empowered, so they can plan, they can give their suggestion in terms of planning, in terms of what should be done in their area. But in terms of all the technical details will be taken care by the planners, by the architect. But in terms of the general plans, so they need to be involved in that process. And then the equity next, the equity approach. So what is equity planning? So it's a framework in which urban planners working within government use their research, analytical and organizing skills to influence opinion, mobilize underrepresented constituencies, and advance and perhaps implement policies and programs that redistribute public and private resources to the poor and working class. So the main objective behind implementing an equity approach is the realization of human rights. But this approach has also other outcomes, such as improving economic growth, cost efficiency, sustainability, and social cohesion that deserve to be mentioned. So this is very important as well, this kind of approach. So it should always be in the minds of every planners and designers. Because when we talk about equity approach, meaning that we are talking about equal, the equal rights of every citizen. It doesn't matter if they are the residents of the country, the residents, or they are illegal residents, or they are migrants. We should include all of this, not because we are not because we are agreeing with their status, for example, the illegal status, but that is why we need to address this. Yeah, we need to address them. Or else we don't know our own community. We don't know whether they are illegal migrant. So we need to include, not because we want to acknowledge their status, but we need to know the overall condition, the overall situations of our community. So when we talk about equity again, so we need to include everyone, marginalized group, minority ethnic, the migrant workers, the foreigners, the international foreigners. So we need to include everyone, because at the end of the day, if you want to achieve the outcomes, for example, the economic growth, the social cohesion, the social problems, to reduce social problems, it can be only achieved if you address all of this group equally. Or else, if you are just focusing on certain groups and left out a few others, then you won't achieve that kind your outcomes. Because if you ignore them, ignore certain groups, there might be another problem. Because we don't 100% blame on the migrant workers. We need to look at our system, how our system works. When we allow employers to take foreign workers, but what are the regulations that we have in Malaysia for that employer to follow, so that they can control, they can provide enough sufficient help or to make sure that their workers are in a well taken care of. So that is how what is our system providing that? Is our system in our governance providing that? So because we don't have a system that monitor this. We just simply approve all of these employers punya application to bring thousands and hundred thousands of foreign workers to work with them because they don't want to hire local, because they want to save budget and so on. But when they bring these foreign workers, they put them to live in a very crowded house. They don't really provide a good good environment. So that is where the problem is created. The problem happens when the environment is like that. So that is why I said we cannot put blame. Of course, those who are coming here, sometimes they have their criminal record in their country that we don't know. So that is why I said our system need to monitor that. For example, when I want to go to study overseas, when I want to go to Canada, they have very, very strict, even for students, even if I am a student and I want to bring my family, I want to bring my husband, so very strict. They need to know everything. And when we go there, there is a multicultural group, there is always a multicultural center. So because they need us to to adapt in their countries, in their system, this is the laws, this is the this is the way thing works here in Canada. So you need to adapt. But they acknowledge our differences, our race and religions. So they acknowledge that. So that's why they have this multicultural center. So when I go there, so I can see that every migrant especially from the war-torn countries, they have to learn. When they come there, they have to learn English. They have to learn everything. They have to go to that multicultural center. They have the system are very organized. It is very different. So there is a lot in Canada. There are lots of migrants now because their country is the country is too big. But the resident is very smaller citizen numbers, almost equal to Malaysia. Just imagine. But the country is too big, so that's why they are allowing people, especially from the war-torn countries, to come to the refugees, especially to come to Canada. But they have a very good system in organizing or monitoring these refugees. So these migrants, because that is what we should do when we want to, because for them, when they come here, so you will be our responsibility, and you are responsible to the country as well. So you will work and then you will pay taxes, but then so it is a two-way mutual outcomes. So we have mutual agreement. So that's the same thing that we should do in order for us to achieve our outcomes. So the equity, the equality. So when we talk about, because now we are moving into inclusive cities for all. So when you talk about inclusive cities, cities for all, we need to acknowledge everyone in the cities. So not only for the Malaysian resident only, for Malay, Chinese, and Indian groups only. No, we need to have this. We need to include all this. What is called all these groups, minority groups, marginalized people, so that they will be counted in our development plan. So how do we plan for this kind of group? How do we give them information? How do we give them education? So that when they are educated, so then we can reduce the social problem. So that is how that is how the system should work. So this is the equity approach. It is more of planner in equity planning. Can you guys hear me? Because my internet said that my laptop said that my internet is not stable.
Yes.
Still clear?
Yes.
Just now a bit laggy, just now.
Okay. Sorry if okay, sorry for the inconvenience. Okay, now the role of planner in equity approach to bring the voices of the disenfranchised and disadvantaged to the decision making table. Equity planners plan the physical city and also deal with policies and programs that address the social and economic conditions of city residents. So this is what I said just now. If you want to plan, if you want to build a town, whatever, a physical city in terms of physical, but we also need to deal with the social and economic conditions of city residents. So if you don't acknowledge their social and economic status, so then I think your plan, your design won't work for them. So attempt to move resources, political power, and political participation toward the lower income disadvantaged population of their cities. So so this is the role of planner. Try to so meaning this is the what you call community empowerment juga. So in equity approach. So there is always community empowerment and also social justice. So this is what we call social justice. So we want to bring the lower income disadvantaged populations to give them this access to resources, political participation. So what are the criticism on this approach? A frequent critique among planners is that even if they are able to prioritize benefit to disadvantaged population in their plans and policy recommendations, they have little influence over whether or not plans are implemented. The adoption and implementation is often in the hands of politicians. So that is what happening not only in Malaysia. It's a global, it's everywhere. So it is always in the end in the hand of politicians. Because why we say politicians? Because they are the one that will govern the country, that will form the government. So that is why we need when we want to vote for educated politicians. So I think I hope that the younger generation can move toward that. So because even if we are doing we have done our best, we have collect all the data, we have include community, we have done our best, we have done everything, but at the end of the day, like this the disadvantage is that the implementation, the adoption is often in the hands of the government. So that's why the lack of political support and other external factors can be barriers to equity planning. But other barriers are internal to the planner's personal approach. So yeah, for the planner's personal approach, we can always change, we can always improve. But the political, that's why institutional and organizational support is very, very important in development, in community development. So as a responsible citizen, choose your political representative wisely. Okay, next, radical approach. So if you look at the word radical one, we know that this must be some the theory or those who are espousing this theory, they are kind of protest lah, because radical kan. So radical ni usually when we come up with a radical plan, because we think that every other plans or every other theories are nonsense, it's not good. So we need to change, and we want to change. We want to do a radical change. We want to do, because we think that this is the only way forward. So emerge as a protest post-modernity. So that is how the radical theories or radical approach emerge, because the protests are post-modernity. So philosophically, such modernity has proved disappointing, and the citizens of settler societies are now aware that it creates generational and ethnic disparities and a form of consumerism which is neither improving nor uplifting, and an ever-increasing resource degradation where demand exceeds the potential to supply, and a level of pollution where dumping exceeds the environment's absorptive capacity. So by Riddle. So this is the protest. So that's why they said the radical approach comes into the planning as a planning theories. So what are the central assumptions? So the radical planning is a stream of urban planning which seeks to manage development in an equitable and community-based manner. Maknanya radical planning dia nak community-based. Sorry, can you give me like 1 minute break? I need to check. Okay, sorry for the break. Okay. Community-based, meaning that this is not only community participation, but community-based. So meaning that the community are doing the planning, and you have to follow what we so there's no like in this kind of approach, there is no like negotiation. So this is what the community wants for this place, for example. But they want it to be equitable, meaning that they have represented all of the groups in their community. So a paradigm based upon system change, decentralization, communal society, facilitation of human development, and consideration of ecology. So these are their paradigm is based on this. They want system to change, decentralization. So actually, when we talk about community development, when we talk about development, actually decentralization is the way forward. So we don't want to because the centralized system is not really helping, because they cannot see all these marginalized or minority group, because it is the government and the governance is too centralized. So decentralization, meaning that you give power to at the bottom rank as well, at the community level, so that they can do a decision making and they can involve in the decision making and making plan as well. So the role of the planner, promoting a radical planning model based on decolonization, democratization, self-empowerment, and reaching out. Promote the agency of decentralization planning, advocating a planning paradigm that is normative, innovative, political, transactive, and based on a social learning approach to knowledge and policy. So these are their principle, the principle of of a planner. So it means that macam there is a transactive approach as well. So we have the transactive planning just now. We're talking about where the communicative is the way in transactive. So in this radical approach, they want the role of the planner is to be transactive as well. And then what are the criticism on this radical? Have been shown to be limited in their ability to provide guideposts for ethical choices made in planning, but both have normative frames that might be extended to provide guides for action. So the only critiques is that the ethical choices. So when you talk about radical, so radicality, so you will talk about ethics. So how do you guide? How do you guide for ethical choices? So ethic is is the concern, of course, because sometimes if there is no ethic, if you just go and without any ethical concern point, it's not really good. So you need to have when you work, when you want to achieve a mutual agreement, a mutual outcome, so with other parties, so you need to have an ethic. But both have normative frames, but they have the frame that might be extended to provide guides for action. So they need to have the framework that guides their action. Okay, so it cannot just main terjah in Malay, we call it main terjah je, or just bulldoze all the system, all the people. So you need to have what kind of ethic that you need to follow, the guideline, the guidepost that frame your work. Okay, last but not least, the humanist approach. This is the last one, the humanist approach. So when we talk about humanist approach, so of course it is more on humanity. So in Malay we call there kemanusiaan, keinsanan. So when we talk about those words, the humanist, the humanity, is more on it's not really on the social. It goes deeper. It goes deeper than the social justice, because it is the inclusive and let's read the central assumption. The inclusive and participatory perspective of humanism also promotes a significant transformation in the practice of planning research. Humanism promotes a broadly inclusive planning practice, recognizing the role of human and non-human actors in creating the world we jointly inhabit. So as a humanism is broadly inclusive planning practice. But it recognizes human and non-human. But it because the kemanusiaan kan, so we need to recognize the environment. So that is keinsanan, kemanusiaan. We need to have what do you call rasa ihsan, the humanity to like our rasa ihsan. I'm not sure what the word in English, towards others, the non-human, the animals, the environment, the trees. So these are the humanist approach. So we're not talking only on social justice or community, but humanist approach is everything, human and non-human actors. So what are the role of the planner? Working within a humanist perspective urge planners to forego such abstractions and to forge our theories of planning through an encounter with the world as it is, phenomenological subjective experiences. So because in humanist approach, they are sometimes phenomenological, based on and the experience is too subjective experience, because it depends on phenomena as well, phenomenology, because you include all the things, human and non-human. So for the human, of course, we can use all the social justice, advocacy, community, but for the non-human, so that is why the phenomenology. So we need to understand all of this. So humanism invites planners to be all too human. So meaning that you have to be all too human. So this is actually this is what is the concern now when we talk about when we see the generation the current movement, the new generation is more on is more on gadgets and technologies, moving into industrial revolution 5. So that is why this kind of approach theories comes again. I think I've heard this about this humanist approach. It's come forward because they said that people will forget about the humanist approach, about the being all too human because of this, because of this current generation, current scenario. So what are the criticism in humanist approach? So the challenge is to link knowledge to action within an inclusive and relational understanding of action. Because this is the challenge. Why? Because the actions of non-human actors are not merely the background or environment of human actions, but rather they are relational counterparts within a network assemblage of effects, such that all actors in the relational networks are participants whose action must be taken into account. So these are the challenge, because humanists, they want to acknowledge the non-human and they need to understand, and we need to understand what are the relation between this human and non-human actions, whether it's whether it is related or not. So we need to understand every relation, every consequence of this human and non-human actions. So planning practice encounters difficult obstacle under this condition because of who speaks for non-human actors and how are the actions of non-human agents taken into account. So these are the challenge, because the non-human, the animals, the environment, who speaks for them. So because if we want to really know, so again the representative also come from the human, who are very that come from for example, like the NGOs, the NGOs for wildlife, the NGOs for the forest. So that is the challenge. How does the reflexive practitioner learn not only from his or her actions in planning, but also from awareness of the actions of multiple human and non-human actors within the planning process? So these are the challenges under the humanist approach, because they want to be all too human. So when we are so immersed into that theories, into that approach, sometimes it's quite a challenge on how we relate or how we represent the non-human as well. But this, I think, for me, this humanist approach, it can be espoused, it can be used based on situation. So you need to see what kind of the situation. So if the situation, especially in a very for example, rural area, so you need to develop, you want to develop that kind of that area, but at the same time you want to preserve the natural environment, but at the same time you want to develop the community there. So I think in terms of that, the humanist approach is kind of helpful, because you need to you need to plan for every actors that is in the picture. So the people, maybe the environment, and then all the flora and fauna, for example. So that is the good thing about humanist approach, because they're not only focusing on the community, but also focusing on everything that is in the picture. Okay, I think that's it for today. Okay, so lastly, the conclusion. Strategic urban planning over past decades have witnessed the metamorphosis of the role of the urban planner in the planning process. So more citizens calling for democratic planning and development processes have played a huge role in allowing the public to make important decisions as part of the planning process. So community organizers and social workers are now very involved in planning from the grassroots level. I think that's it for today. Any questions? So after all, as a conclusion, so these are the importance of having all those theories. Just at the end of the day, we want to create a democratic planning, and we want to involve community or the people that we serve. So if you want to plan for a community, for a neighborhood, then you should involve the community of that neighborhood. So if you are planning for a place that also consists of forest reserve, so you need to know what kind of action, what kind of explanation that is best for you to use in order to plan and to design for that kind of area. Okay, I think that's it for today. So what I want you to, so I just recall that about the role play next week. Okay, so next week, usually, I think I want to do the role play in class in the studio, because it is easier for you for each group to to act, to do the role play. However, if things are not going well, so meaning that maybe I don't know, maybe there's some issues occur, I think you can also make a video. So you pretend to act as the role play, and then you just record. So if we cannot come to class next week, so we just play the video online. We can do an online class like this, but just play the video for each group. Do you get it? Do you get what I mean? What I'm saying here?
Yes.
Okay. So just okay, but I don't have the group names for the first assignment. The urban design redefine the urban design strategy tu. I want that group name by today, by this week. So please give me the group names for the first assignment, and because I need to open that link, assignment link in the Putra Blast, so only that group will submit. So not everyone should submit in Putra Blast. And also for this group, for this role play, just 8 groups, and then 8 groups, and if you are recording, just make sure it doesn't exceed 5 minutes. So just like 5 minutes, 5-minute role play. So what do you, I think you understand kan role play. So if you are doing, for example, okay, I'm just giving you an example. If you are doing advocacy planning, advocacy theory. So Maybe there will be one of you will act as a planner, one of you will act as a lawyer, one of you as a maybe 2 or 3 as a community, and then so you have to creatively create your own situation. For example, a developer wants to develop a condominium high rise in your neighborhood. So how do you involve the community there in the planning? Or otherwise, you can also otherwise you can make community protest the development because they are not being involved. So you play your role in that. So the community said why you didn't involve us in the community, and so because but make sure that every dialogue shows your understanding of that theory. So if you're doing this, so I know that you understand about this theory. Okay. So it is up to you to choose your own group and then to choose your own theory. So that's why you have to nanti later on terus tulis in WhatsApp group. So which group are doing which theory, so that you know lah macam mana you all nak choose kan. What are the approach yang masih available. Okay. So please please give me that 2 groups name for assignment 1 and for the role play.
Doctor,
Alright. Yes.
for the role play, right, we do it online or physical class?
That's what I'm saying that just now. I wanted to do it in the class, but if let's say if some of you got, I don't want to say it, but got infected by COVID, or maybe if I myself cannot come because there are lots of situation now, so we have to think about that. Because for example, my baby's nursery, sometimes they said that there is a case positive, so they need to close the nursery for 1 day. They need to sanitize and whatever. So I cannot come to my work. So I have to work from home. So that kind of situation, or some of you got infected, and then that's why I said. So the best way is that for you to record as well. Of course, you will. I know that you after this you will form a group, and then you will choose your topic, and then you will try to practice your role play. So you can just maybe during the practice you just record. So maybe that then you can edit lah the videos or whatever. Make sure it's just 5 minutes. So make sure next week, because next week we don't have lecture. We just we will do all of the slot will be on that role play. So we just play. If we cannot come to that to class, to studio next week, so we just play video online. So we will meet in Zoom like this, and you will play your video. Okay, but if there's nothing happen and we can, and everyone can come, so we can. I prefer to do it in class. Okay, so my preference is in class. But if something happen, we go online. Okay. Any other question?
No question. So you will let us know on 1 day before the class
Yes.
whether it's online.
So yes. So on Tuesday. So if I forget, please remind me in group on Tuesday. Ask me on Tuesday whether it will be online or physical. So if there's nothing happen to me and my family or whatever,